All right, everybody. Welcome to the Cashflow Empire. It's been about 2 nights, John, right, since I've done the introduction. So I'm sure y'all miss my scratchy voice. So that being said, welcome to the Cashflow Empire tonight, where obviously we love to bring family, friends, business partners, and just everybody. And we'd like to discuss, the good, the bad, the ugly of multifamily real estate. Tonight we have a very, very special guest, and she means a lot to me just because she's in a sense seen as girl, right, Jonathan? And it's funny because when we started this podcast show about a little over a year ago, Cecilia was actually one of the first people that we actually had interview. We're like, hey, do you mind if we got a podcast going? We don't have no live audience, but can do you mind just doing us that solid? We think that you would bring a lot of value to a lot of people that want to learn about multifamily, right? She said, of course. And I remember I was sitting right next to Jonathan, and I hit him under the table. I'm hitting him under the table because I'm like, dude, are you listening to this? And that's whenever Jonathan said, you know what? We need to do something. We need to expose this to everybody. It can't just be me and you, Serge. So that's when we started to take this whole platform public, right? Live every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central. So that being said, I would like to formally introduce Cecilia Cosio, who's seen this episode and this podcast grow since day one. So we would like to re-welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having me. And as I stated earlier, I hope to live up to the hype and all the kudos you guys gave me. Thank you. I appreciate this. I have seen you guys grow. It is touched my heart because I being here from the beginning, right? Watching y'all, meeting y'all at Rock, I think it was, and staying in touch and connecting and supporting each other, supporting others has been wonderful. So I thank y'all for having me on. And, I want to provide value to everybody out there. You can drop your link in the box if you'd like me to connect with you sometime in the next few weeks, guys, because my schedule is really busy, but I will reach out to anybody that has questions that I'm not able to get to today. You guys asked me to come on and talk about property management, and I think my bio talked about my property management experience and my desire to empower others. And that's really what we talked about on the first podcast, right? So we talked about how property management, it really isn't rocket science, but it does take significant relationship skills. You really have to be able to relate to everybody that you touch, and that is not just your resident, who many people call tenants. I call them residents, right? And your vendors, your community. So in my years of property management, I feel like there's a lot of things that are not really understood by. I'm gonna speak candidly here. Okay, I myself am an investor. So as an investor and having experience in property management, I understand both sides. Joining these different masterminds and groups a couple of years ago, I realized, like, crap, like, you can invest, but if you don't understand property management, it doesn't really matter, right? Property managers are not magicians. They are there to work a business plan. So the business plan has to be properly set up from the beginning. I'm speaking totally on the property management side, okay? So it has to be properly set up from the beginning, and then you have a good property management company that goes through and follows that business plan and adjusts as needed. So, I know everybody's talking about trying times, rents, this and that. Well, to me, that's, yes, things are a little different, but it's just a tad different. It really isn't, not in the DFW area, not in most of Texas. So it's about you adapt and overcome. A great property management company will make the adjustments needed. But more importantly, we'll have the foresight to see the adjustments that need to be made. So I think, when we talk about property management, I'm going to give y'all some things that you need to think about. So it's about resident management. It's about financial management. It's about property maintenance. It's about, your legal compliance, marketing, and not just, the old school marketing. We're talking about new generational marketing, because you're marketing to people, of all generations. You're talking about staff management, which is HR. You're talking about technology stacks. That's not something that from my time that you had to worry about a lot. You had one computer and that was it. Now we're talking about 10 different platforms that you have to integrate into one. You're talking about the community events, sustainability, what kind of energy can we say, risk management. Sergio, you and I talked about, risk management. We talked about ADA today when we were walking the property. Fair housing, right? Does everybody here know the protected classes when the investors, as an investor and part of an investment team, when we go out on property, I need to make sure that everybody's taken their fair housing training, because I don't need them saying things that may not be intended in a manner that seems inappropriate. But if it comes out, how it's perceived is how it's received. And that's what matters when you're out on site. And that goes with the residents, that goes with the employees, with the community. So it's really important that as property management companies, we train our people, but as investors, we train ourselves. What is it that we have to do to protect ourselves from ourselves? Because we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes as investors, we definitely believe we know everything until we get slapped with a lawsuit, and then it's like, oh crap, why did that happen? Well, because, you made a joke about somebody or somebody in a protected class that, even though it was intended to be perceived in that manner, it was. And that's what matters. So the technology stacks, we talk about, or we deal with different technology stacks. And what is it that we're doing on properties? So the standard, I'm going to take this hand in hand. Okay. So you have, the standard is one person for every 100 units. That is the standard for properties. But that really is just an industry standard. If you buy a property that was not properly maintained, you really need to consider putting in an additional half person throughout the first, or a full person throughout the first 90 days, throughout the first 6 months, throughout the first year, depending on what the business plan is for that property, will determine on how you set up your payroll. Do not be penny wise, pound foolish, because it's going to bite you in the end. If you have people that are worth their experience, pay for it. Because somebody that can lease up 5 apartments, say you're paying somebody $10,000 more a year. Well, if your average rent is $1,500 a month, you make that up in a month and a half if they're able to keep those 5 units leased or 7 units leased. So we have to think about these things when we're doing the underwriting. And I know I'm talking about property management, but I integrate them both because I have the ability to do that. So when you guys are out there and you're underwriting these deals, understand what is truly happening on these properties and what you're going to need, not what you think you're going to need, what you're going to need to sustain the asset, because it's about asset preservation. You have to have people on the property that understand what that means. That means keeping up with the property, having the proper maintenance, having your proper PMs. If you don't know what, as I speak, I'll try to stop myself when I use, certain words, but PMs is preventative maintenance. So if you do preventative maintenance, you're changing out the AC filters. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but has anybody opened up the actual AC cage to see what that looks like? Has that been washed out? Has the exterior ACs been watered down? Have they been cleaned out? Do you have leaky, what do you call it, water heater pans? You know, are they going to leak into the unit down beneath you? And when you do this due diligence, you really need to have a team that understands those concepts. There's a lot of great due diligence teams out there. Fortunately for me, because we have gone through a number of acquisitions in my lifetime, we have it down pretty packed. And but it's about paying attention to the details, right? We all want to get a deal done, but let's get it done right. And you do that by leaning into a good property management company.
Phenomenal. And I think for those of you that weren't on the call before we started this recording, me and Cecilia were actually at one of our assets in Dallas, 63 unit. And I was learning a lot. One of the things I really took personal as an owner, right? Because, you know, a lot of people close deals, right? They're like, oh yeah, you know, I'm on this deal, I'm on that deal. You know, I do asset management, but one of the things I was personally telling Cecilia, I was like, look, Cecilia, you know, I get this whole asset management construction things, like that's what I do. I said, but I really want to take pride on learning the management side of things because as an owner, you know, I personally think that you should know, you know, how to read an MMR. You should know how to look at financials. You should know how to look at just rent rolls and T12s and really just determine what are you looking at? What, you know, what's not looking right on these financials, right? And Cecilia, coming from your experience, because you're kind of, when you start buying apartments, you're looking at it from management side of things, like she's saying, but you're also looking at it from you know, as an investor, as an owner, right? You're looking after money, the money you've invested personally. So that being said, you know, how hard or how easy is it or how important is it to really start correlating both of those and how important it is for actual team members to take property management serious?
Well, you know, I'll go back to my experience and my expectations of my team members.
And
Okay.
talk crap too, Cecilia. Talk crap if you have to. This is why we got this. If you go off, you know, I love it.
So, what I say about it's vital. If your property management team doesn't understand it, then you need to find one that does. Okay. So, and I say this I'll start with this. It's really easy to be really good in really easy times. But when times get tough, how are you going to make it happen? Because it still has to happen. It still has to make it, you still have to make it happen. And I say that to say, like, in times where I can't do anything about interest rate changes, right? I can't make some of that stuff up. But what I can do as a property management company, and not as an investor, I'm talking about as a property management company, because in my history, I've had properties that even during good times were having challenges meeting the DSCR. Well, my job as property management leader and my regionals and my managers was to understand what that meant. So if I have a DSCR, then you teach your people what that means and how everything above that impacts that DSCR. So it's very simple to say, well, you know, all you got to do is stay occupied. Okay, yes, occupancy cures all. That's what I used to tell my people. Like, occupancy cures all and no surprises. If I don't have any surprises and you're occupied, I'm probably only going to stop by your property during my quarterly visit and to give you a gift card, you know, just thanking you for staying off my list. When you have, you know, 5,000 units, you tend to focus on those areas that are hot spots. So like the property that wasn't meeting the DSCR. Okay, what is it that we need to do? how is it that we can help this owner? So from a property management standpoint, you need to find somebody who has experience and teaches their teams how to start with the end in mind, and not just teaches their teams, but follows up. Now, there is no perfect management company out there. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all drop the ball. But the key to that is transparency. Like, if you screw up, you say, hey, I messed up, and here's how I'm going to fix it. Not, hey, I messed up, but you know what? It was Tammy. She didn't do this, or it was Sergio, like he didn't do this, or it was Jonathan. Now, when you start, oh, it's the market. Okay, well, what are we doing about it? Because I can't move the property to another state or another town. So what's the solution here? What if we have to shift the business plan? Then tell me what it is, because the property management group that is out there is the one with the experience. They should be able to tell you what the market is doing. They should be able to tell you, you know, one of my KPIs is not just resident retention, but you know, my advertising. That's some serious money that you spend on advertising. Well, what's working? Like, okay, great. You know, apartments.com charges me $1,000 a month. Oh, they send 1,000 people to my site. Well, if only one of those people leases, do you think that that's worth it? I don't know, maybe. I mean, then I start asking apartments.com, well, you guys need to do some name matching to show me that these leases are truly matching up, because maybe, you know, they are coming from apartments.com, or maybe that's how we got the first hit. But these are thoughts that you have to think outside of the box instead of just relying on reports. I can pull reports from the system all day long, but if the data that's in is junk, then the data I get out is junk. So you have to have some common sense in what you do every day and how to find solutions to the problems that you're having on site. You also have to have a little bit of foresight. Now, we don't, you know, have a crystal ball where we can tell the future, but I can tell you from history a little bit of what's going to happen. And then I can tell you if I'm looking at my lease expirations, if I'm looking at my notices to vacate, hell, I'm just looking at my delinquency. Like, look at delinquency. And if somebody hasn't paid for over a month, unless it's tax season, if you're on a C property, they're probably not going to pay. So you need to start counting those, that unit is vacant. You need to start planning ahead on how am I going to solve this problem, right? You need to communicate that to your investors. It is bigger than just saying, you know, well, you need to be occupied. Okay, so what's the goal to getting occupied? How are you going to get occupied? What tools are you going to use to stay occupied? Because it's a lot better to retain than to turn. Retention, that's another one of my KPIs. Just a nugget there. Retention in employee and residents is equally important to me. And actually, I must say that my employee actually has the upper hand, because without my employees, I can't do crap. Like, you know, when I walk a property, I need to pick up trash. I may be the president of the company, but if there's nobody there to pick up trash, well, first I'm going to call a temp. But in the meantime, I'm at least going to pick up the trash around the office. You can't leave trash hanging around the office, guys. It's such a bad message. And honestly, the people that work out on site are really hard workers, and they have families at home. And you really, when you go out there as investors, be mindful of that. Be mindful that you have them running your multi-million-dollar assets, and the importance of making them feel how important and how valuable they really are. They are key to the success of every one of these assets. Now, they don't guide the asset, but they make things happen every day. The people guiding the asset or the business plan, are the regionals, the managers, the vice presidents, the president. You know, it's our job to lay out that plan and adjust and adapt and overcome and provide tools and guidance and all that great stuff that, you know, we come up against every day. If everybody knew the challenges that property management groups, property management teams truly had every day, I don't know, they'd probably have a little different thought process on the things that they deal with, because what they make happen out there sometimes, you know, people in not against anything with people in suits that go into those tall buildings in downtown Dallas, right? I've been one of those, but if you ain't got people skills, you ain't making it happen. You know, so you gotta have common sense. So you've got to be a hard worker. You've got to love what you do. You've got to take ownership. And you've got to understand that, you know, it takes a lot of planning and adjusting when you're out there. So here's a problem, here's a solution. Here's a problem, here's a solution. And if I could show y'all my planner, I don't know where it's at. Like, I have my planner that has a list on it every day. And like every day I mark my things off and I move them over, and then I mark those off and I move them over. But I don't want to move my camera. On my board here in my office, I have, you know, I'll give you an example. First quarter KPIs, PM inspections, housekeeping inspections, work order ratio, occupancy, collection ratio, onboarding time, onboarding for employees. Because if you lose good employees for lack of properly and quickly onboarding them, it's really, you know, it hurts your pocketbook. Turn time, marketing sources, electronic signatures. One of my KPIs is how many of my units have been converted to electronic signatures, because people like to say, your C-class residents aren't going to do that. Baloney. They pay everything online. Okay. So it's our job to educate our residents. And as long as we take the time to educate those residents, the only reason that your residents, and I want y'all to listen to this, the only reason your residents should be coming in is for drinks and cookies. If they can pay their rent online, they can submit their work orders online. Like, you should be holding events where you're out there talking to your residents, and your residents should be coming in to tell you how happy they are. Now, that's living in a fantasy world. We thought that was happening every day. But the reality of it is, your capital stack should be so good. And it's not like it's not feasible financially, because it's part of every program we have. It's how do we use it? Is your management company setting up your work orders electronically? Is your management company properly setting up for people to do electronic signatures? How are things being set up on the back end? And when they're not being set up correctly, who knows? Do you know that a form isn't being used? Do you know if you're charging back water that you have to have a certain calculation? Do you know if you have an all bills paid property and you start charging back electricity? If you mark the form that it can only be charged through a sub-meter program, then you better hope that's how you're doing it. So who's checking all that when you do these acquisitions? Well, if you have the right property management company, they will be checking all that, right? So I have a, I hate to sound so much like I, because it's not it's my team, you know, so, but I have a sheet that we start using the minute we are looking at a deal. So this was a cycle of when I did third party management. Okay. Looked at a deal, somebody would come to me and say, Cecilia, we're looking at this deal. Can you do the underwriting? I would do the underwriting. I would shop the property. I would provide whoever was interested in the deal all the information. They put in an LOI. Okay, then we're going to go do the due diligence. So I take a team, I go do the due diligence, create a report saying, say you have 100 units and you have to have 50 refrigerators. Like, the report would show 50 refrigerators with a unit breakdown. And that's just an example, right? So then you take that and you move it on to the next step of the acquisition. And before you get to the acquisition, while you're closer to the acquisition point, you've got a list of things. Do you have the CO? Do you have the permits? Is there a fire inspection? You know, are they meeting ADA? Is there 2% rule on ADA? Has there been any issues on the property? Are there any issues from the time that you got the PSA signed to the time that you're at in the acquisition status? So there is so much more involved. Then you take the acquisition. Well, then it's like, everybody put your boots on because we're going to be running, right? And hopefully everybody has a checklist, but this starts from the day that you start looking at that asset, you start doing the underwriting, all the way to the time you do the disposition. So you have to have somebody that has had experience in each cycle of that set or of that property. And there's plenty of good people out there that have done it. I don't do it third party anymore, but you know, it is something I love to do. It is something that I consult on. It is something that when I watch people grow into their best version of themselves in this industry, it touches my heart forever. So yeah, there's my
That was great. That was great. We do have some questions in the house. I think Robert had it. We're real quick though. I do have a quick question that I would like to know, just for everybody that's a first time investor in the house. You know, we've talked about all these things on what a property management company does, what a PM does, but just in a glimpse, if you can explain, when is it necessary to have a property manager for a property that someone does buy when it comes down to multifamily, and why is it necessary?
well, it's necessary to have a property management company if you've never run a property before. You know, running single family homes is different. So anything over 4 units is regulated by fair, like you can get in trouble with fair housing, like you have to follow certain rules. And that's not at one place, that's like throughout different places. So if I have 2 units here, 2 units there, 2 units here, like I'm held to a different standard when I am looking at applications. So, I mean, did you know that? Something as simple as that? That's my point, is when people don't know what they don't know, right? That doesn't mean, you know, anything other than they would not have known that. So, it is about anytime you have not run. Look, you're investing millions of dollars. Do you want to try to figure it out by yourself? But if you do try, here's one thing that I'm going to tell you. Read your lease. Read the lease. Like if I can tell you anything, please read the lease, because if nothing else, it protects your resident, and hopefully it protects you some until you realize that you really, you know, need to get a property management company. I would say if you're going to spend millions of dollars, you need to get a property management company. If you want to self-manage, you know, how do you put 30 years into a cup, right? And not 30, look, it has not always been great. Cecilia has made mistakes. Cecilia has done everything right and still didn't have it work out the way it should have worked out, right? So there's a lot of things that go into property management that need to be considered by whoever's doing the investing. If you're investing other people's money, hire a professional.
100%, 100%. No, thank you, Cecilia, for sharing that. And yeah, something that people don't understand is like it's a totally different business when you put the property in the contract, when you close it, and then when you execute the plan, right? But even I see sometimes that those webinars, those presentations, those projections, sometimes there are a little too aggressive, right? Because it's you can say that you are gonna do 10 times the money in 5 years. I mean, you can do that in a presentation, right? But how you can make sure that you can execute that. So my question for you, Cecilia, is because I'm sure you deal with a lot of different owners and partner apartment owners and everything. So do you think that having experience is the only thing needed to make a business plan, especially when sometimes these properties owners, they are expecting a lot, right? And how can property managers deals with these aggressive projections, right? Because sometimes maybe you check numbers and they look too aggressive. So how do you deal with that?
Well, one is I do my own. Okay. So that's where I start. When somebody tells me that when I did third party management and they wanted us to take over the properties, I would always do my own projections. I'm sorry, my own underwriting. And then I would give it to them and I would say, this is the underwriting. This is what I'm coming up with. No, well, no, it's not. This is what I think you can do. Okay, well, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you what I think we can do based on the time and my experience. And then I'm going to give you the worst case scenario. And you can take that for whatever it's worth. But that's what I'm always going to do. If somebody's underwriting is not where it needs to be, or like if I know there's just no way I'm going to hit it, then I'm going to have them sign an NDA. I'm going to have them sign all kinds of forms, because one is I'm going to have them acknowledge that this is what I told you was going to happen. So when they're all pissed off and saying how bad my property management company is, or how, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, or my company didn't, or my people, whatever it is, right? Then I'm going to pull out that information and I'm going to say, here you go. I have no problem doing that. I also don't have a problem, never had a problem telling somebody, no, you don't understand what's really involved here. And I, respectfully, I can't be part of this, because one is you're taking other people's money. So if you're going to take other people's money, it becomes my money, it becomes my responsibility. And I don't take that lightly, because that's my grandma, that's my mom, that's my sister, that's my brother, that's my kids and my grandkids. And I don't play with their money. And so I will not be part of anything that I feel is just not going to work. And if you're putting numbers out there just to put them out there, like, go blow smoke up somebody else's butt, because it ain't gonna fly with me. You may not like me, and that's fine. Like, hey, I respect whatever choice you make, but I'm going to give it to you straight. I don't, from a property management side, 3%, 5%, like that is not worth the headache to deal with people that have unrealistic expectations and set up the situation to fail from the beginning.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. I love it. Love it. Thank you for sharing that, Cecilia. Let's go to Tiago. What's up, Tiago? Thank you for coming, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Mr. Jonathan. Hi, Cecilia. Good to see you
Hi.
all. We didn't miss each other much. It's just a few days before, right? This week. Yeah, I just want to, really congratulate Cecilia, because I'm in the real estate business for years and I own a property management. I started with college kids, actually managing a dorm 15 years ago. That's how it started, not because I wanted or liked it. It's just by default. But a lot of things that Cecilia talked about, when the investors come in with some numbers, which, the white paper sheet fits any kind of numbers, and they transfer the numbers into operations, into a management company, it's a totally different story. And what Cecilia talked about, actually, she brought it up in the middle of the meeting, which was, really courageous of her, is that sometimes the investors come with this, sophisticated strategy that is not achievable. And one thing that, not many companies, like somebody comes to a property management, they will take the client despite of the numbers are working or not. And that is an institution that you're trying to preserve, like Cecilia's name. Hey, those numbers will not work, when we put that in practice. And I just, Cecilia, you're one of a few. I know at least 4 big property managements and a lot of lower on this, up to 4 units, and they don't say that. And they don't even educate them because they don't want to lose the client. So your integrity is worth more than, I cannot even put a dollar sign there. And it's good that they're integrating you into the investment group, that you can bring reality to the group. Because sometimes we investors, we like numbers and we like to make things pretty or even prettier than it is, depending the appetite. But you give a reality check for those companies there. That's 2 thumbs up. I just wanted to bring that up because it's very crucial for our industry. The second question that I have, Cecilia, nowadays we know technology plays a really, really big role, or it's always like being ahead of the industry. So what kind of softwares you used before or you using that you see it has all the platforms you need, the finances, the people that are coming in, operations, tickets, maintenance, they integrate everything. What kind of softwares out there to say, man, I try it all, probably in 30 years you did so many and this really worked really well?
Well, there are so many out there, right? There is Entrada, there is OneSite, there is Yardi, there is Resman. I believe that Tammy is Resman. I don't know what Casa uses. I can't remember the name of it. I've used Yardi, and I'm currently, my 3,500 plus units on OneSite. The tech stack is only as good as the people that set it up and understand how to fully utilize it. So if you start setting up all these systems and all this technology and you don't set it up correctly and you don't properly train your teams, and then you're not consistent about the follow-up on the things that they're doing in the system, then it really doesn't matter, right? I think that I'll give you an example of a situation. I have a property that I was going in, so quarterly my assistant will give me some reports, and I started looking at these reports and I'm like, well, there's some inspections missing on this one property. If they were staying in line with the goals that they're supposed to hit quarterly. So I went into the system because I always know how to work the system. I don't ever get so far ahead of myself that I don't know how to go in and look up information. Okay. So I went in and I started looking for the data. And so I found out that their iPad wasn't working. So they were doing everything manually. But this was just this first quarter because last quarter they were fine. So it takes, there's so many different programs out there. So to answer your question, there's so many different programs out there, but it's really about utilization, how you set it up and how you utilize it. So, and working out the tweaks, because guys, the people that are going to tell you if it's working crappy, if it's working slow, if it's, just too much time are the people on site. So you constantly have to be communicating with your site team members and asking them, how is this working? Why is this down? Or why is this slow? And then you try to get that information from the different sites. If you have 20 sites and you start hearing the same thing you start hearing about the same problem from the different sites, then it's a software problem and not a user problem. Or it might be a training problem, or it might be that we did a really sucky job at rolling it out and training our people. Like there's so many different factors in there, but they all serve the same purpose. So it really depends on the user experience and what you want from your user experience. What is it that you need? I like to look at my rent growth reports, and so I set up, like, my screen is completely set up differently than from my assistants and from my regionals and from the managers. And the managers' screens are dashboards. When I say screens, their dashboards are set up differently from the assistant and the leasing and the maintenance team. So it's all about how you set it up and what you need.
Got it. Perfect. Just one important question, Cecilia. We know that fair housing, that's the one that I always try to, come after. We have many reasons to be sued. But so people can understand, right? Because we're talking a multifamily here. Once they either get into the multifamily or they already are, what they must do to prevent, or situations that had happened to you, they say, hey, this happened, we should have done something, or we could protect in a different way. What kind of reality or situation you had in the past that happened to you or to the company that it could be prevented or addressed quickly, not to become legal?
So I'll give you two examples. One that happened to me directly. I had somebody come in, they were Hispanic, and I said, ¿Cómo le puedo ayudar? How can I help you? And they looked at me like, I don't need you to speak Spanish to me. And they filed suit. That anybody can file suit, guys. Anybody can file a fair housing complaint. Okay. Then they look into it, and then you go through this process, and it's just so then you have to take the time to defend it. You gather the information. And I always tell my people, I would rather have you making the same mistake 10 times than treating somebody differently. So, because I can defend that, right? Then I can say, and when I say defend, I say that loosely, right? I can show that there was no ill intention. There was no, like, we didn't treat this race differently or this color differently. They were treating everybody the same way. They were saying the same thing to everybody. So like, that's easier to go back and explain than, when they're not consistent. So consistency is key to staying out of trouble. The other one is a show unit on the second floor. So this is a situation that occurred with a company that I was working for. So the person didn't want to take a person came in a wheelchair, and the leasing agent said, well, I can't show you the unit because it's on the second floor. Right? I mean, if you don't know any better, and our fault for not training properly, in our defense, a person wasn't there long, blah, 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 and all that stuff. But you take that person and you show them the location. You don't know if that person can go up the stairs with their arms. You don't know. So like, you don't make assumptions because somebody's in a wheelchair or somebody speaks Spanish because, they're brown and they need you to speak Spanish to them. Like, do not make assumptions, but be consistent in how you apply your processes. And really, in the grand scheme of things, be professional. Don't be a knucklehead. Don't talk about, things at work or with residents that you shouldn't be talking about. You don't go talk about, somebody's national origin or sex or, familial status or disability or race, color, religion. Just so y'all know, those are the protected classes. And there's more based on your jurisdiction. Like, you can have marital status, veterans, like all of those are, the last you could be protected based on where you live. But just don't be dumb. And I hate to use that word. It's not a word I typically use, but like, don't be ugly. Don't be ugly. Like, you know what? Be professional. Maintain that. You're in an office. You're dealing with multi-million dollars. Like, why do you think that you should be able to talk to this resident in a manner that is inappropriate? Like, no, don't do it, because residents are your friends and employees are your friends until they're not.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. It was very helpful. I just want to bring that up to us because there is so many things we can do, but very few things that we should be aware of not to do. And that's why I brought it up for the community to learn a little more. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love it.
And
Thank
sorry,
you.
my passion gets involved there when it comes to like being.
No, I can see, and everybody can see that you love, what you do, right? That's why you speak with that much passion here in this call. And thank you, Cecilia, again for being with us tonight. Let's go to Michael. How are you doing, Michael, man? Go ahead and ask your question.
Hey Cecilia, thanks for coming out tonight. I just want to thank you because I've learned a lot already. But I just have one question. So obviously you've managed a bunch of properties and they're all different. But as you first take on a property, are there any common early indicators that if you don't deal with could just ruin everything in the future?
Well, number one is if you don't deal with the realities of whatever situation is happening, right? And you know, people say, well, that's like in everything. Well, let's not sugarcoat it. Like if there is a real problem on the property, what's the problem and what's the solution? There is no real one, like I can't give you one thing that, you know, could be detrimental because it's all important. You know, you've got risk management, you've got financial management, you've got staff management, you've got, you know, property upkeep, you've got you know, even technology, right? Because if somebody breaks into the system, like boom, what can happen, right? Lease, keeping up with leases, you know, making sure if you have hard leases, they're not left out. So that that's legal compliance. So like it's all equally important. And it becomes on prioritizing, like if you're burning and you're in a fire, okay, what's going to keep me out of trouble, keep my residents safe, help me pay the bills? Like, what does that mean? It could mean so many different things on so many different properties. But being consistent is key. Read the lease, read your handbook, understand the laws of the area that you're in, and try to use common sense when applying a lot of these practices. Like if you have nothing else, like if you follow that lease, guys, the lease is key to everything you do on that project. You can't just go make up rules on your own. I mean, you can, but it's going to bite you. So hopefully that
Okay.
answers your question. I wish I had one thing, but
Well, yeah, I wasn't necessarily looking for just one thing, just like, but that concept helps. So you're saying like to go back to your analogy with the firefighting, just kind of as soon as you get in there, just look for the biggest flame and just simply just go from there systematically.
yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Go ahead and go to Robert. I know Robert's had his hand up for a minute.
Appreciate you. First time
Yes,
on the
sir.
call, so hello, good to meet everybody.
Welcome,
Thanks
brother.
to
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Cecilia, a quick question here. What's the best way to verify rents in a market that you might be unfamiliar with? How do you look at and verify NOI? And second part to that question is your thoughts on Section 8 tenants in general.
Okay. I'll start with the first two and then I'll give you my feedback on the second or the third. Okay, verifying rents. You can go online and see like go to surrounding properties of whatever asset, you know, you're looking at. Go to surrounding properties. You can Google map and then see what's around there, right? Look at those properties and see if they're about the same class or age. Start looking at those rents because they will tell you what the rents are because they're trying to get you to apply online. If you don't get enough information that way, it's good old boots on the ground, going to the different properties around you and looking at, you know, going in the door and acting like you're looking for an apartment. Make a phone call, send an email, and all of those responses should match on what is happening. You can go to CoStar, like that's a whole different expense and all that stuff, but like that is the quickest way to know what the rents are. As far as NOI, you know, it's income, less expenses, your NOI, but it's understanding everything in between those numbers, right? So on the expenses, I always tell people, are you looking at the general ledgers? Are you under accrual? Are you under cash? You need to understand that when you're looking at those reports as, you know, as an investor, understand what kind of books you're getting. And then the more information you have to go back on, the more, the better you're going to be able to see what's really happening. I also, I look at a T12, but with that T12, if they'll give me a balance sheet, I'll also be able to see their open receivables, their open payables, which tells me like, are these people paying the bills? Are they taking care of the property because they can't pay the bills? Their open receivables, how much is in the books that nobody's looked at? No, but that's a whole different, like, they don't typically give you the balance sheet when you're looking at, because that's a lot of their personal information. But the T12, the general ledger, looking at that general ledger, if you can dig into that will give you more information. The T12 is great, but it's very top level. And there could be accruals there, or there could be, if it's an accrual-based financial, then there could be invoices that weren't entered. And if they stop at NOI, you don't know that if a lot, they may have expenses that were put below the line to keep them from showing up under NOI. So if you have a property that you see struggled with income, from January to February, or January, let's just say first quarter, you see that there is a dip in income, and then you see that April, May, June, they started picking it up, and you see the vacancy loss, went down, and okay, but you don't see that expense on the maintenance and repairs. So where is that expense? And was that turnover 10%? Was that turnover forced? Was that turnover, was it turnover forced and then was it upgrades, or were there no upgrades and they just pushed that below the line? So there's a lot of different things that I'd need to really look at a specific situation to be able to answer some of those questions. Section 8. So I was telling Sergio and Jonathan earlier that I have, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, if you have, you need to get the type of property management company that understands your asset class. Well, absolutely you do. Absolutely. But you can find those good management companies out there that have done everything from A to HUD. And they have the right people in place, and they understand the markets, and they understand everything that has to take place in order to run the different type of assets. I've been blessed with the experience to have run all those assets. So all those type of assets, I've been blessed with great employees, right? And great training throughout my career that has allowed me to do all this. Section 8 vouchers are vouchers that people can carry around from different apartments or to homes. Tax credit properties are required to accept Section 8 vouchers. Then you have HUD properties, where those are income-based properties. So people confuse the two, and they're two different things. I believe that they all have their challenges, and it's about how you run them. It's about the management you have on site. And then it can go deeper in the sense of, if you're in an area that's not going to evict people for bad behavior, then it's hard to enforce the rules, because you do have an upper hand when you have subsidized assistance, because you can communicate with the caseworkers if it's a voucher. And even with the bigger programs where a property is subsidized, you can hand out lease violations for behavior. And after a certain amount of lease violations, you can file evictions for behavior. So it is not, it is not an easy, they're 30% AMI residents. So if you're going to do those type of programs, I also recommend that you also invest into the community and help solve some of the problems that require those residents to be in the program. You can't save everybody, right? That's not what I'm saying. But be part of the solution in giving, look, let's not take and let's give. That's the bottom line. You know, Section 8 vouchers that move from property to property are great, but have some resources there for the children because it's typically family based. Typically you got children in the household. And so, you know, make sure that you have things set up where they can be part of camps or have access to camps or have access to swimming lessons, things that they wouldn't normally do. So that's a whole different tangent that I can go on that I won't go on. So Section 8 vouchers are not horrible. It's based on how you manage them. And so you have to have somebody that understands how to manage them, how to get rental increases. That's a big thing. You know, if you don't submit the rental increases in time, you don't get them. But right now, like on one of my properties, I'm getting $250 increases on one of my voucher programs. But I know how to run them. And I have people that know how to run them.
So follow up on that here. How does it work when you see some of the markets where Section 8 is paying more than market rates? Are you seeing some of that in some of the areas that you're serving? And how do you reconcile that? And what's happening in those markets?
Where Section 8 is paying more than the market rates?
Yes, like in Denver, for example, HUD is paying like $1,500 for Section 8 HUD programs, but the market might be around $1,200 or so. Are you experiencing that in any of the markets that you're in?
Not at this moment. I have in the past, and I have increased the market rates. So I don't know what that market looks like, but I will tell you why. Why is Section 8 don't like paying more than market. So if Section 8 is paying more than market, then if I was a property management company, I'd be boots on the ground trying to figure out why, what do I need to do, and figure out how to increase my non-Section 8 residents by at least $100. And I'm just throwing that number out there, but like, to me, knowing Section 8, knowing the programs, that's not the norm. I haven't been in Denver in over 8 years, so I don't really know what's happening there, but I would definitely figure out why. And then try to push my market renters up.
Thank you.
I ask
Great
a lot of
question.
why questions. Always ask a lot of why questions.
Phenomenal answer and a really great question, just because everybody assumes that a lot of the times, you know, Section 8 is the way to go because they pay, right? Government's paying. But I think it was a great answer right there. So we go next
Hold on a
question.
second.
Yes.
Sergio, real quick. My partner Jocelyn said housing shortage, and she's right. She's one of my partners. We have a deal in San Antonio, guys, and she's right. She's in New York, and she gets a lot more done in New York than most people do, and they do pay. Jocelyn is more experienced in dealing with the Section 8 in her community, I think, than probably anybody else, but they pay 120 over the rent. And I will tell you this, so if they're paying it, then you should be able to push it more in that market. So you know, why aren't you, or why aren't we? Like housing shortage, okay, with housing shortages comes increased rents. Like we're still in business to have a business. We're still in business to make money. Right? So like you push them, you know, I hate saying it out loud there, but really, you know, you have housing shortages, you increase the rents. That's what's happened. That's what's happened over the past few years.
Phenomenal. Jimmy Lou from Seattle. Let's
Hey,
go.
Cecilia. Hey, Sergio.
Hi.
It's always great to see you, Cecilia. You always have the big smile. So my question is, I mean, obviously you have a lot of experience in the property management for 30 years. And I'm wondering if you're comfortable in sharing with us like one example that, like one of the scenario that didn't work well, one of the property that you or your company managed, and what was happening and what was the cause, and anything that we can learn from that?
I won't give anything specific because the companies that I've worked for have done a really great job at trying to minimize their risk. But what I can tell you is lack of consistency. When we have had issues, it's because we weren't able to provide a pattern of practices in place. So if my surveillance cameras are down, they're not security cameras. They don't provide security. My surveillance and surveillance is kind of iffy too, okay? Because is somebody sitting there watching them all the time? No, nobody's sitting there doing nobody's. I mean, you may have somebody that's watching them all the time. I don't, but they are cameras and they record. So they are utilized. My cameras, on my properties, I don't even call them surveillance cameras. I just call them the cameras we have on property. They are utilized for the police department to pick up and come and pick up any footage that they need, should they need it. We have a policy in place that if my cameras go down, if my gates go down, if I have organic growth, because I am not a mold certified tester, so I'm not going to call it mold. If I have organic growth that is seen on the wall, then we create a work order. And that work order is, our system is set up to flag it as a level 1. And that level 1 is recorded, and then everything in that process. So from the time that we call the camera vendor out, to the emails we send to the vendor, to the calling the gate company out, some properties, people hit your gates all the time, right? Those are access gates. They're not security gates. They're access gates. And so you create a process in place where you can show that we have been consistent in making these repairs. Now, I'm going to use my disclaimer here. Everything I'm saying tonight is not going to keep you off from being sued, or, I am not giving legal advice or any advice. You need, if, anybody here is in property management, talk to your property management company about why and how they do things. But it really is about the processes you have in place. And are you following through on those processes? Remember earlier I was talking about the inspections and the tech stack and all that, and it's only good, it's only as good as a follow-up that you do to make sure it's being properly utilized. So there's, that's just part of it. Is, do you have a process in place? Is it being utilized? Who's following up? Who's the checks and balances? These are things that are major, right? And can cost you a lot of money. And sometimes you can do it all correctly, and you're still going to get sued. And that's just part of the game we're in. It's business.
Cecilia, can I add something really quick?
Yes.
Now, on the insurance perspective side, even though people already know, but I've been a corporate guy for the insurance industry for the past 18 years. Make sure all of you, if you're having recording on site, you must display signs.
Yes.
You are recorded. If
Yes.
you have a footage and you go to the third party with that footage without having those signs, I'm not a legal advisor, but I've been in the insurance industry on the high level. That can be forfeited as a proof. Make sure single family, multifamily, 1,000 families, display signs of you being recorded on site. That's it.
Yeah, he is absolutely right. That is one of those risk management compliance pieces of it. There's pieces to your pool. Today when we were out at Casa, I hit the button. When you have a pool, you want to check those pool phones every I don't care if you're out there, every week. Check it every week. That always make sure that pool phone works, because if there's an emergency, somebody needs to be able to hit it. So there's signage that's required for that pool signage or for that pool phone. Always know, or make sure your management company knows, the signage that's required at the gates for towing, for rent, no cat, like there's so many different things that you have to have in place. But these are the things that your management company should cover.
Great answers. Oh my God. And I'm gonna start when summer hits, Cecilia, I'm gonna start hitting that button every week while I'm there. Testing, making sure there's 911.
No, don't wait till summer hits. You do it every week that you're out there. Every week.
I love it. And I saw how you did it. So what a great call. What a valuable call. Before we do stop the recording and go into breakout rooms, I do want to mention, guys, Yoshi has been posting a link. And that link right there is a workshop that we're having next month in person in Dallas, Texas. If you can fly out, we're doing an underwriting workshop where you're learning what to look at financials. And after that, we're actually touring a property on the deal that we're kind of dissecting per se, right? I think that that's super important, because I remember when I first jumped into multifamily, I didn't know how to look at that. I didn't even know what I was looking at, or what are some red flags? What am I looking at on this T12? What am I looking at on this, rent roll? What are the key indicators, right? So this is something that you can either fly in and attend in person, or you can do it virtually online. And because you are part of the Cash Flow Empire community, every Tuesday night, you do get 15% off. And Yoshi has a link to that. Guys, I really recommend you guys, if you want to take this serious, get into multifamily, start underwriting and understanding how numbers work. What is it to look for on these properties? I would most definitely join it. I'm excited to look at it myself, and I've underwrite plenty of deals. So that being said,
wait. I want to throw a shameless plug here.
Yes, go ahead.
So I want to share with everybody that we are having our book launch, Real Women in Real Estate, Volume 2, on March 8th. So I'm super excited to have been part of this. This is, like I said, Volume 2, and you've got a lot of great women in there with their own stories and what they've experienced in real estate. So you guys, I had Tammy put it in I asked Tammy to put it in and share it with y'all. So keep an eye out for it and support these powerful women that are out there making it happen every day. Just so y'all know, women investors only make up about 1% of all investors. It might have jumped to 3% in the last few years, but minority women are even less than that. So hats off to all investors, but I got to give a super duper kudos to us women investors who are out there, making it happen, because we are we're powerful women. We're powerful, and we're going to make big things happen in the years to come. So thank y'all.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next week.